Hey guys, this is Marcus with Push Square, and in this video series I'll be pitting the photo modes of various PS4 exclusive games head to head in an attempt to capture what makes the perfect photo mode. I'll be looking at all sorts of things like the depth of camera controls, visual filters and overlays, game customization options, lighting capabilities, and any other unique features that I come across in each game. I've prepared pairs of games for each episode that have similar qualities and thematic elements to more easily contrast the photo mode capabilities of each game. Today I'm kicking things off with a superhero themed episode consisting of Sucker Punch's infamous Second Son versus Insomniac's Spider-Man. To set up some context for these games, Infamous was nearly a launch title for the system. It came out within the first 6 months after PS4 launched way back in 2013, whereas Spider-Man swung in much later in the life cycle, coming out just this past summer. Infamous Second Son was the premier first-party title to include a photo mode, and as a result, as you would expect, it's pretty rudimentary, but it has all the standard controls you'd expect. You can move the camera forward and back, you can pan and orbit around the player. But I found some difficulties with these controls, especially when it came to moving the camera forward or back, because those two movements were in a separate interface tab from the rest of the other orbital camera movements. And then the photo mode options almost end there, which is pretty disappointing. There's some depth of field controls, which are honestly some of the better ones I've used, even compared to newer games. And it makes it really easy and quick to adjust the f-stop and focus range from close to further distances. And it also has really great precision because the incremental adjustments are very small. Lastly, Infamous only has about a dozen or so filters, and there's no options for intensity or exposure with these filters, so that leaves a lot to be desired. In terms of render distance, you can't move the camera any further from Delsin or Fetch than it goes during regular gameplay, but you can turn the camera in the opposite direction if you still want to take environmental shots. And you can't move the photo mode camera at all during cinematic moments or actions, which we will find that you can in Spider-Man. Both Second Son and the First Light DLC have time of day settings available after you beat their storylines, which is always a welcome addition for people who really want to set up some perfect shots. And just some additional things that I noticed while messing with the First Light DLC is that game has a noticeable film grain over the screen at all times, and there's a vignette that appears when Fetch is damaged, which carries over to the photo mode. And I don't think these aesthetic choices were present in the Second Son core game though. And then on the other side of this comparison, we have Spider-Man, which is the most recent PS4 exclusive to include a single player photo mode, and it is by far one of the most polished and extensive of any game I've played. Immediately, the most unique feature in this game is definitely the sticker library, which allows players to put all sorts of text bubbles and comic action lines and all sorts of little images on their photos. And then combining this with the massive library of filters and overlays, which is still growing with each DLC that comes out, there's more than enough options to create a huge variety of screenshots. The camera movement options are also really extensive, and unlike Infamous, they're all accessible from one central tab in the interface, but that doesn't mean it's totally perfect. I found some of the controls are a little bit jumpy, especially with the trigger actions, but I could easily use another movement option to be more precise and approach my camera angle from a different way. But yeah, the Spider-Man has all the features that Infamous has, and then some. The render distance is about the same, but you also have the ability to hide characters in the game world, as well as take selfies as Spider-Man, so it just gives you a lot more options and makes things a lot easier than turning the camera all the way around. But as I said, it's not perfect. Some other hiccups that stood out to me were with the depth of field options. I found that the focal distance and aperture settings had rather large increments, so I found it a little bit difficult to adjust and focusing in on certain subjects at certain distances. And as well, that the focal distance and aperture settings do not blur foreground objects at all, so that kind of made distance photography kind of disappointing. And then another kind of annoying thing is you can't change spider suits without quitting photo mode, which means you have to set up your shots over and over again if you want to experiment with the various spider suits, which was a huge part of this game. Other than that, I think the game could really use a motion blur slider because the gameplay has a lot of cool motion blur effects, but you can see these effects disappear as soon as you open photo mode. And I just kind of wish that you could adjust those settings. But I'm just dreaming of new features at this point. I think overall I spent more time in this photo mode than with any other game, and I obviously enjoyed it a lot anyways. But yeah, in the end, Spider-Man is a lot newer game with a much deeper photo mode. But as I mentioned, it's not without hiccups. Some of the aspects of photo mode are better executed in inFAMOUS, and there's still something to be taken note of from the older game in this scenario. And inFAMOUS, of course, needs to be given credit where it's due. It was really one of the earliest games to adopt this idea of photo mode in a single-player experience. I think it was the first exclusive on PS4 to have it, and it really kicked off the initiative for all first-party PS4 games to try and implement similar capabilities. But yeah, which game did you guys spend more time taking photos with? Remember to like this video and subscribe to Push Square for next time when I compare the photo modes of Uncharted and The Order 1886. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.